intervention. I know who that is. That's fine. I think we'll see. I think we're all. No, should we get people in? Do you want to? Yeah. We have guys that go off and do taking what's around the world. You can all that. Use holidays on that one things. It's very nice to hear. Well, we actually haven't done the first one, so we'll see. So we'll get everybody. I think we'll get people in. A good idea? Yes. We lost the not to. Do you have a child in the environment? Do you have a child in the environment?
Yes, yes, I have. Sorry, I'm French.
So,
Don't understand the wedding. So, yes, we have the chair. We have the fire. Understand better.
yes,
And the daughter, which is a woman, year 5. I'm sorry.
No, she's going. Where in France?
From Normandy.
Yeah.
Now that's it.
Yep.
Mr. Shorten's by taking some.
Yes, we do. So family holidays. No, there. It's not assuming to do that. But we look at the time in Normandy, which is somewhat the same age as we're new to the rule of it, but we're new to it. It's also nice. Yes, so like a lot of joint schools to be here. So yeah. I mean, enjoy your video, right?
Well, a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening in Dean Close House. Those of you who have not been here before, this is the sort of beating heart of the Dean Close Foundation. It's really centralised lots of our services, all sorts of offices upstairs. So deal with your finances and that sort of thing, marketing, etc. in this building. But welcome to Dean Close House, and a particularly warm welcome to our panel. I'm not going to go through and introduce them all. I'm just going to introduce Mr. Salisbury. I'm very grateful for Mr. Salisbury, head of Dean Close School, being with us this evening, and he's brought his SLT with him. And they are all going to share with you a bit about their role, a bit about the senior school. Because we realise at this stage, when you have children in year 4, 5 and 6, you are thinking about the next steps. And you're thinking about whether across the road is the right move for you, or whether there are other options that you'd like to discuss with us as well. So we hope that you get a lot of information from your time this evening. Of course, you've had an opportunity already to discuss things with them, and they'll be happy to answer any questions you may have as well. As a prep school, we are very fortunate to be tied to the senior school. We're very fortunate to have those links with the senior school already forged, because not only do our pupils at the prep school get to know the senior school because they're over there and they're geographically close by, we also get to know the staff. We share, of course, a similar ethos. We share expectations of behaviour and that sort of thing too. But of course, as a child does move from the prep school to the senior school, as it is obviously from the pre-prep to the prep school, there will be some changes, and it's obvious that you're going to want to know a bit about those things too. At the top end of the prep school, we do work hard on forging those links for the pupils as well. So, for example, our curriculum, I'm sure Mr. Holt's going to tell you a bit more about that, with our 7 to 9 curriculum, make sure that we do have that smooth transition academically from the top end of the prep school into the senior school. We call that the 7 to 9 curriculum too. There are links when it comes to the co-curricular areas too. So we end up with links in sport and in music. I think this weekend we had some of our prep school pupils taking part in some sport with senior school pupils on the regional finals, netball final that were taking place. And then we have music links as well. So this week on Friday we have some prep school pupils taking part, I think, in the Gorsati and other parts of performances at the senior school too. So already we make a lot of use of our links with the senior school, which works very well. So I hope you return home this evening having been well informed and perhaps reassured about what we have to offer at the senior school. I'm going to hand over to Lee Salisbury. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Moss. It's really good to be with you, and also everybody online. Great to have you with us too. We hope that this is useful for you. In front of you, you've got well over 100 years of experience in secondary school. Well over 100 years. So please do ask us anything that you would like about secondary education. So most of us would have trained at 11 to 18. We've seen a huge amount of change from our time in school. So what essentially our panel represents are the different aspects of life in a senior school. And we really hope that we're going to share some stories really of things that we do that might just give you a bit of a flavour of the senior school. Also really happy to answer questions either as a group now or hopefully in the other room as well, one-to-one. So, but if you do have a question, this is a really good time to ask that anything about education as we go. So if I could just ask my colleagues to introduce and just say their role. We'll just go flat down the line if that's okay. James, we'll start with you.
So my name's James Hall. I'm the Deputy Head Academic in the senior school. So I oversee teaching and learning, the timetable, the curriculum. I line manage the heads of department and the directors of studies the directors of studies are effectively sort of year heads. So we have one for the fourth form, one for GCSE and one for the sixth form. As Mr. Moss has said, so with the fourth form, we have the 7 to 9 curriculum. So what we try and ensure is, because we're 13 to 18 and not 11 to 18, that there's continuity through those years. So in Key Stage 3, it's really important because from year 9, our fourth form, they start GCSE in a year, that when we pick up the pupils in the senior school, that they've covered the material they need to in Key Stage 3. We've used it as an opportunity actually to also, we have something, the 5 C's, so critical thinking, creativity, communication, compassion, and what's the 5th one?
Would you like us to help you out?
Big one. What?
We can work together.
Creativity, critical thinking, communication, compassion,
The one thing you're missing from your team right now.
collaboration. So what we do, so that there's a shared language between the schools, we make sure that each subject within the curriculum, they actually focus on one of those areas. So the pupils, as they move from the prep school to the senior school, are familiar with those terms, and they can see that in the teaching and in their subjects. One of the things we've worked on, actually I'd say particularly since the pandemic, is to try and make our curriculum as distinctive as possible. One of the things we did, and I've sort of said in a different forum that, in a way, necessity is the sort of mother of invention a little bit. And during the pandemic, we felt that some of the pupils, although we were teaching online, and I don't think we missed a day, did we, during that? They didn't really have that much to do. So we had this idea to have a project for them to work on, sort of a little bit based on the EPQ, the Extended Project Qualification in the sixth form. It's like an AS level, but like a sort of a miniature version. So I got departments to sort of devise subject-specific project for the juniors and for the seniors, or they could have a free choice. They could choose whatever they did. And it was absolutely extraordinary what they came up with. And they didn't have to do it. It was voluntary. They weren't forced to do it. But we had poetry anthologies. We had music albums, which were actually written and performed, as you would expect. loads of research essays and so on, but an awful lot of different media being used as well, musical and film. And it worked so well. We've done it since, and we actually, the artifacts that they produce, whether it's filmed or whether it's written, are so good. We actually set aside about an hour at assembly at the end of the summer term for these to be presented, and it was astonishing. We had a girl who actually competed in the first one and did very well, and she's very interested in film, and she's sort of aided and abetted by her mother, who I think is quite interested in drama as well. And they did a sort of Alfred, her name's Morella, and she did a sort of Alfred Hitchcock style. It was about 5 or 6 minutes, and it was really quite frightening. Actually, I think the whole of the season they were on the edge of their seats. But by the same token, we had another boy, Alex, who's fascinated in trains. And he recorded himself, did a sort of a video documentary of him travelling around the country on trains, which might seem a bit of a sort of quirky or odd thing to do. But actually, his enthusiasm absolutely shone through. So, we're constantly thinking of different ways to cater for different interests of pupils. We have a scholarship group as well. We have a junior critical essay, a senior critical essay, something called the Bowden Society, which focuses on learning outside the curriculum. So we're constantly looking for different ways to sort of engage pupils and get them to think beyond what they're just learning in the classroom.
That's brilliant. Just one clarification is our year groups are slightly confusing. So it's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, but we also call them 4th, remove, 5th, lower 6th and upper 6th. Remove in particular feels appropriate for the stage of development and the things that are going on for the young people at that particular stage of life. James, just the creative side is amazing. I'd love to, could you just talk through a little bit about how we pick up maybe underperforming students, and maybe just talk a little bit about the upper 6th group and what you're doing with those. So we've just had our trial exams for the A-level students, and a number of them have done absolutely phenomenally well. And there are some, as you can imagine, who maybe didn't do so much work and are a bit of a concern. What do we do for those students? What are you doing particularly?
So we, as I mentioned, we have a group called the Director of Studies who are effectively year heads. So when pupils join us in the 4th form, or if they join us for the 6th form, we use what's known as baseline data. So in year 9, it's Midges, and in the 6th form, it's Alice. And basically, they're aptitude tests, which are predictive. They're not 100% accurate, but they give us an indication of where a pupil's strengths lie, whether it might be linguistic or mathematical and so on. And we track their performance against that. So our latest data, the 5th form and the upper 6th have just done their GCSE and A-level trial exams. And one of the things we do, the directors of studies will plot their performance against that. So we see if they're underperforming, if they're outperforming their predictions, and so on. And last year, we had a group in the upper 6th who we felt were in danger of underperforming in the upper 6th. And I have to say, mostly of slightly sporty, but maybe not the most industrious boys. So in the 6th form, they do have free, they call them free periods, I call them study periods. So we decided that for their own good, that maybe we would supervise these in the library. So they all had to have their own place in the library where they would work. Now, of course, they should be doing that. And what we ideally want is the pupils to be in the houses, for them in preparation for university to use their time effectively. However, they gave us sufficient evidence to realise that they might have needed a little bit of help in terms of doing that. So there was a group of 20 or so who would be supervised. And it was actually really interesting plotting their results at the trial exams and then in the real exams, in the summer. Because with only a few exceptions, they all ultimately performed at the level they should have done in the trial exam. In terms of their work ethic, it really improved. So We trust them to the point where we think they might need a bit of help, and then we intervene.
That's a good summary. Thank you so much. Jackie, can I come to you then?
Yeah.
So our particular structure, we have two deputy heads. James oversees the academic stuff, and Jackie the pastoral.
Yes, so I'm Jackie Davis, I'm the pastoral deputy head. I have been here a very long time, and a sobering thought that occurred to me this year: there was no child in the school that had been born when I started teaching at Dean Close, which made me feel unbelievably old. But it's my 18th year here, and actually I started my career at Dean Close as well a very long time ago. So I'm the pastoral deputy head, so I'm responsible for things like I line manage all the boarding houses and all the day houses. I line manage tutoring, healthcare, counselling. I'm also the safeguarding lead both for the school and for the whole foundation. So I have a sort of very much hands-on role in the senior school for safeguarding, but strategic role for the foundation as well as for health. So I think my unofficial job description is if it required a tissue, it probably requires me somewhere along the line. But I mean, I have a very privileged position really. So I line manage all the houses and house parent to a very diverse body of people. And we are quite different from the prep school in that the house is our unit of administration. So we don't have forms, we have houses. And so all the children in the senior school belong to a house, and that's where all the notices are given, all the sports teams are sorted out, all the bits and pieces that need to be done are done in the house rather than in a form. And all the houses are different; they've all got their own characters, but we all sort of basically work to the same framework in the way we look after our pupils. Within the house, the younger pupils have tutors, so a bit like a form tutor, but a tutor in the house, and they oversee the progress of each of the children academically, co-curricular, pastorally, will oversee the children. So we have quite a hierarchy of pastoral care. And that means for every pupil in the senior school, there are always 2 or 3 people that know them really, really well and that they can turn to. We also use a peer structure quite a lot because there's only 5 years difference between year 13 upper 6th and a 4th form pupil. In terms of maturity and in terms of life experience, there is quite a big gap. And we often use 6th formers to mentor either officially or unofficially younger pupils as well. So sometimes it can seem really, really strange if a child's come all the way through the prep school and they're used to being in somebody's form and houses are more for co-curricular and sporting type events. It can seem a little bit strange, but actually it works really, really well. And it does mean, I think sometimes parents worry a little bit that their children have been in a similar form all the way through the prep school. That's going to continue. But lots of friendship groups are mixed around and children are split and go into different houses and form new friendships. They maintain the friendships they have from the prep school, but also going into teenage years, it gives them that opportunity to mix with others and get to know other people. And particularly in year 9 and 4th form, because they all do the same curriculum, they mix with lots of other children in classes as well. So the house parents and the tutors are the main port of call for any issues, good or bad. Unfortunately, I tend to get involved when the issues are bad, because most of the good things the tutors and the house parents deal with. But lots and lots of teenagers go through issues. You know, I'm sure you can all remember being teenagers. It's a time where we're meant to change hormonally, physically, psychologically, a huge, huge change. And there's very few who navigate it without any problems. But what you'll find with us is because we are big enough to have lots and lots of different children and lots of different sort of backgrounds and experiences, but we're also small enough that every child is known. And if your child is experiencing a problem, there will be somebody that knows them really, really well. So the tutor or the house parent or another teacher will know them very, very well indeed and pick up issues. And most teenagers will have various ups and downs. Somebody said to me today, actually, came to me with a problem with one of their children, and she said, "Oh, you're very good." And I said, "Yeah, I'm very good with other people's children. I was absolutely hopeless with my own children." So as parents, you know, if you're absolutely at your wit's end with your own children, and somebody like me comes in and says, "Oh, it's all going to be fine," you know, we're in a very different position to you. But they do, yeah, growing up, there's lots and lots of issues, lots of friendship issues, and their friendship groups change, their interests change. And it's quite hard sometimes if they've been with somebody for a long period of time and they suddenly realise, well, actually, I don't really have so much in common with this person anymore. I have now more in common with these other people. And that can be quite painful for children to readjust their social circles. And we're there to sort of help them through it.
Okay, we talked earlier. So one of the things I've Jack and I worked together for a number of years now, and we've seen pretty much everything. And if I haven't seen it, Jackie certainly has. We were talking earlier about an example of people who went through the absolute worst of times.
Yeah.
Would you just tell, without sort of naming names, maybe just tell us a little bit about their story?
So a few years ago, we had a girl who went through extraordinary mental health issues and tried to kill herself on several occasions. And there was a very, very low point for me where we had a meeting. She was in the meeting, and both her parents. And she said, "Well, I won't be here at Christmas, so I don't know why you're bothering. I don't know why you're fussing about me being at school, because I'm not going to be here. I'll be dead by then." And it really, really hit absolute rock bottom. Lots of outside agencies were involved. Fortunately, we've got the whole social care system, but we've got very good links with all the different mental health institutions within Gloucestershire. And she really hit absolute rock bottom. And we played a small part. All the other agencies played parts as well. And she's going for her first interview for a place to read dentistry at university next week. So I'm going to cry.
No, it's important.
Yeah, she did fantastically well. And that's, we've had 2 or 3 children like that. There's another girl that I remember talking to who said, if I let you go home, she said, yes, I'll go down onto the railway line. Right, okay then. I'm not going to do that. And we've helped some girls and some boys in some really, really dark places through. The vast majority of teenagers, even though they feel they go to those really dark places, they're not that bad. And I've got such an experienced team around me. The house parent team is so strong that there's lots of us there to try and help and support and contact the right agencies. And I can be quite vicious on the phone, really, as Bradley knows. If I can't get well, or social care or health or whatever it is I want, that we push and we push and we push until we get what we need. And I think the other thing really is actually, again, during COVID, which I know is a long time ago now, but we had 22, mainly Chinese, but other peoples as well, stranded here for 18 months. And we had them here all over the Christmas holiday. And they learned, it was quite strange really, because the older ones have been here for Christmas dinners and things, and then gone off home to their home countries and not really understood what it was all about. And it was just brilliant having them here and being able to show them what our Christmas was really like, but also learning from them and the situations that they were in. So we've seen an awful lot, and I know all schools do, but I think we are the right size really, so that children can do what they want to do, find their niche, find their friends, but we're small enough in that it's very, very difficult to pull through the cracks with us. Very difficult. Somebody somewhere will pick them up and brush them down and sort them out.
Thank you very much. If you've got questions about our academic or pastoral, maybe seek out James and Jackie at the end. We're going to use that segue of our international people just to come to Rachel. Do you want to talk a little about your role, Rachel?
Sure. So, excuse me. My name is Rachel Vest, and I have a number of strands to my role at the moment, but the longest one that I've held is having an eye on international pupil experience. So really it's that journey from the moment that they'll arrive, really nervous, playing, they might be there with parents, or they might not be. And really it's that soft landing right at the beginning. So, we host an international induction weekend, and throughout that weekend, it's really opening up perspectives and opening up confidence in those pupils to come forward, to ask their questions, to challenge us, to give us their ideas, and for them to feel that we're a community that they can do that. Because obviously I've lived abroad, I know what that's like. I used to think, for example, that my French was very strong until I went to teach in a French-speaking school and sat in the teachers' meeting, in the staff meeting, and came out with a blinding headache and didn't understand all the terminology. So I always really feel for them when they first arrive, that first weekend. And as Jackie alluded to, then I think it's a process of learning, as I learn as much from them as they will learn from us during that journey. And I don't think they quite believe me right at the beginning when I say that to them in the theatre at that first welcome event. But it's so true. And actually seeing a lot of those internationals from many different places across the world really, and it's one of our key words, isn't it? Flourish. But it is true. We see them start to flourish and have that confidence to share their culture. In the last 2 weeks, then we've had our pupil leaders who would have arrived. Some of them in prep school, some of them in fourth form, some of them when they were a little bit older. But actually, have got through to sixth form now and are taking on leadership roles and teaching the younger pupils in the school about something to do with their culture. It could be language, it could be something linked to a festival. And obviously, last week we had a really important event with the Lunar New Year. And I'm just so proud that there's such a confident group of international pupils on our committee now who are willing and brave enough, have that courage to come forward and actually lead events for the rest of the school, to stand up and speak in front of the school, and to lead workshops where really it's such an enriching experience for the rest of the community. So that's been kind of my
Your role has
crown,
tweaked a little bit.
but it's tweaked a bit.
What are you on now?
Okay. So I've still very much got my eye on that international and building all those relationships, obviously with families and pupils. And what I learned through that was really the care of the pupil with all that expertise around the pupil. And during COVID, over many years, I would say as well, it's really learning how you can bring that expertise together for the benefit of the child at the centre of that. So that could be tutors, that might be mental health team, might be academic, might be co-curricular, and really coordinating that to the benefit of the child, depending on what their strengths and their needs are. So this new kind of aspect of my role is called Pathways. And it's very exciting because it is really about unlocking the direction that some of our more complex pupils with complex needs, are unlocking where they want to go with their journey while they're here with us at Dean Close. And the first element of that is really fostering that confidence so that they will share their ideas with you. As part of the Pathways, I line manage our learning support department, and I line manage the futures team and the library team. So actually, in terms of looking at futures, then working with our young people to think, actually, what are your interests? What are your passions? How can we build that experience for you? But actually doing it on the ground. I know it's something that actually I worked in a number of schools, probably all of those schools would have said, this is what we do. We build the experience for this young person and we enable them to reach their potential. But actually, in a concrete way, doing that on the ground with the young person and learning about what fires them up, what their passion is, what motivates them, can help them to engage with some of those areas of the school curriculum that actually they might find more challenging. Having that goal at the end of it can really motivate them through. And as Jack said, then actually you're working all together around the child, and strong communication between the different teams, between the academic teams, between the pastoral teams, to put the needs of the child at the centre, I think is key, and that's an exciting aspect of my new role.
So if you've got any questions at all about your learning support team or international provision or about futures and how we look at that kind of question, it's changed a huge amount over the last few years. And do speech ratio at the end. Greg, shall I come to you now for a bit about curriculum and the wider piece?
Yeah, so I'm Greg Baker-Williams, Assistant Head Co-Curriculum. I was Director of Sport for 10 years prior to this role, and I've been at school for about 15 years. I suppose I'm responsible for the pupil opportunity beyond the classroom and providing opportunities to help shape them as young people as they then embark on life beyond Dean Close when that time arises. I line manage the directors of sport, drama and music, as well as the heads of Duke of Edinburgh, CCF, Adventure, and many, many more. I'm also responsible for trips and visits, both at home and abroad, and that is something that is kind of really interesting to be part of. So the offering that we can provide at various stages of school life is something really, really quite positive indeed. There are lots of reasons why we should offer a really good co-curricular provision. There's probably two that I've summarised it with. One is to find and follow something that they love. If we can't do that, then we're really not opening our eyes up enough. But we offer over 130, nearly 140 different activities per week in the senior school. And it is our hope that our pupils will find something that they can genuinely flourish within. Sometimes that can be something brand new. Sometimes it can be something they did before they joined us, but we can really promote them and push them as they need to be challenged and so on. The next thing is I've always said that school is a springboard for later life. So the things that we offer and the things that we do really should shape your children, our pupils, to be the very best versions of themselves by the time they do leave us. And think that's the key thing for me, is making sure that our infrastructure is set up so that pupils can really kind of navigate through their kind of schooling, finding their feet, finding their passions, but ultimately reaching that potential. I think I've got a nice story from my kind of early days where he was a boy who was in a prep school, was in third team rugby, bit of a late bloomer, Mr. Pollard, and he ended up playing first team rugby here, but also using rugby as his vehicle to get access to Cardiff University to study law. He played for Gloucester, kind of the senior academy, but also played for England under 20s. So he had started in a real position of, it was never his roots until he suddenly found his feet. And there are many more examples of that. So that was one that springs to mind. But ultimately, I think, for me, it's making sure we have a breadth in our offering, a quality in our offering, and making sure that our pupils can find something. And we ensure that our pupils all do a kind of 3 different kind of co-curricular activities per week. Now, for all of them, one of those is sport. We know the value of that physically and kind of mentally and socially. And they would typically pick 2 more. Now, that's kind of the minimum standard. Lots of our pupils will do lots more than that, because that's quite a deep, close way to be involved extensively, contribute in various parts of school life. But also, some of our pupils are very busy out of school. And that's something that I think we've had to get very much aware of in more recent years, that kind of, if your children are heavily involved in kind of, I suppose, pathways in music and drama and sport, the demands on them outside of school have suddenly gone up like they never have been before. And as schools, we have to recognise we don't always know what's going on, and that's where the relationship with the parents is so important. Not directly to kind of the directors of sport, drama, music, etc., but to tutors as well, making sure that the connections of information do come through, because if we don't know, we can't help. But ultimately, we want our children to do lots of good things. I think that's key for us.
Right. You're also a parent at this age.
Yes.
What would you say is the difference in the co experience of a child of this age and a young adult, it's kind of 17, 18? Can you talk about the difference between those?
Yeah, definitely. I think Mr. Moss mentioned earlier the kind of the crossover between schools, and certainly in our co-curricular provision, that is the case. Staff work quite freely between both schools. But I think the job is to give them the skills as they're younger, and the ability to learn the foundations of the things they're doing. And as they get older, they should be challenged in those. But ultimately, we want leadership. We want people to take ownership of the things that they're doing, and to be responsible a little bit for their journeys and for the next steps, and making sure that it's not just being told to them. We want them to take a bit of ownership on their kind of goals and aspirations, because that's what they're going to have to do when they leave us anyway. We'll put the things in place for them, but actively they got to take charge.
That's great. A really good example I heard about this week. We're part of a thing called the Cheltenham Education Partnership, which is all the secondary schools across Cheltenham. And we meet together at various events with schools, as I said, across it, from state and independent sector. And essentially, we all pay into a single pot, all equally, and then we provide different activities. There was an event that happened this week where 7 of our students, lower 6, so year 12 students, went to speak to the local mayor, to the local MP, Max Wilkinson, and various others. And they were working with kids from all the different schools. They were working in small groups. And at the end of it, I think pretty much every group, the person who led that group was a Dean Close student. Because they are brilliant at, because of their experience that they've had in the classroom,
Moonlighting.
or a seance, one of the two. Chaplaincies will be okay. So whether it is, they seem to have a natural confidence that comes from the pastoral care. They get that confidence from the academic studies. It gives them the skills to feel confident in their mental abilities, whether that is through the pathway or through their co-curricular. Now, if I come to Rona's responsibility, I'll let you explain this. I'll be interested to see what you say. This is our last sort of panelist, and then we'll break up from here.
Okay, so I'm Rona Donaldson. My title is Assistant Head Operations. I think I would generally describe it as kind of the day-to-day running of the school. Often people say, Rona, I'm not sure if this is you, and I go, it probably is. I'm that kind of person, but if it's not, I can send it the right way. So I do the day-to-day running of the school, whether that's just making sure pupils are in the right place, whether there's seating plan for chapel or theatre is correct, whether things are running smoothly in the dining hall. So I do that. I run the calendar, making sure that we've got a full calendar, but it's not too full, and there's not clashes and things like that. I am in charge of behaviour in the school, which is something I actually really enjoy doing. But the pupils know I actually share an office with Greg, and if they come to see him, that's normally because he is fun things. If they come to see me, that is normally not quite so fun for them. So ideally, their aim is probably not to see me. And I also oversee and organise the special events that we have. So whether it's the remembrance services or the commemoration of benefactors or our speech day in the summer, any of those special events.
And car parking.
And car parking. I didn't want to mention that in case anybody's got any complaints.
So a hot topic often is around how we manage phones, and a number of schools have sort of put themselves out of the headlines about how they do it. What does it look like? What does it look like for us? You've got a bit of that.
So mobile phones are something which we all know, probably all know, are a massive distraction. They're a massive distraction for us, and they are very much a massive distraction for teenagers. So in our years, 9, 10 and 11, at the moment they come in and they have to hand in their phones at the beginning of the day. So at 8:20 they hand in their phones and they get them back at the end of the day at 4 o'clock. So they don't have a problem with temptation. Our sixth form, however, we're trying to teach them a bit of responsibility. They are allowed to keep their phones. They're allowed to keep their phones as long as they are not distracted by them. So we have certain rules where they're not allowed their phones in the dining room. That's a place for eating and chatting. They're not allowed their phones in lessons unless it's for something to do with the lesson or in supervised study periods and things like that. So this year we introduced the pouch. And this has been great. I love these. The sixth form, actually, I think they're quite fond of them as well. You know, when I walk around with them, they all keep their head down and they like it when they're in a group and someone's got their phone out and they see me coming. They're all quite smug apart from the person who's about to be pouched. So all teachers have these, and if they're not using their phone as they are supposed to, the phone goes into this and then is locked quite easily, and it actually blocks all the signals. So even if they've got a watch, which would normally get messages and stuff, the signal is blocked. And at the end of the day, they can be depouched by coming to see me or going to the front office. And actually, when we introduced these, when the pupils came at the end of the day, I'd say, how have you survived without your phone? And they were actually quite positive and said, well, I've got so much more done. And they don't understand that we're doing it for their own good. I mean, I do it for my amusement as well. But it is for their own good and they do benefit from it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So there's a whole load of stuff we've opened up for questions. Is there anybody who's got a question now that you think might be relevant for everybody, or we can take it outside and talk individually? Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Good to see you. I was really interested in what Jackie was saying, and I just wondered if anybody might need a little bit of context with teenagers, because that wonderful story that you told us was very reassuring. And as a father of 4 boys, the youngest being 9 and the oldest being 21, I get it. I know what you're talking about. But I know that when my children weren't quite that age yet, and they weren't teenagers yet, they were happy, confident, and there was no way they would ever be depressed in any way. But I can just confirm for everybody, our children really do change as they grow into teenagers.
They do, and if you were inventing a system, you probably wouldn't invent a system where children are sitting the first set of the most important exams they sit at a time when their bodies are raging with hormones and growing and changing, and they're trying to find their way in the world. 16 is not a good age to be taking exams, really, is it? And it's hard, and I think it's always been hard being a teenager, and it's certainly not got any easier as the years go on. And there's an awful lot of distraction for them. But we try and help them navigate through it. We've got a PSHE program, which is personal social health education, which covers a huge range of topics, from sex education through relationships, friendships, a little bit about how to manage money. You'll be pleased to hear. Lots and lots of different topics that they cover as a way of trying to introduce them to some of these things. And for some children, hormones hit very gradually. You know, it's quite a gradual process, and they manage it quite well. For some, it literally is. What was the show with Kevin in it? I can't remember what that was now. When he woke up overnight, it was yeah, they do literally overnight change from this beautiful, sweet child into this sort of hormonal raging creature that you then have to manage at home. And all of us are very experienced. Lots of the staff at school are very experienced, and just helping children go through those changes and those issues that they have, and that actually taking protein shakes is not the only way. Putting in muscle. Lots of or girls putting 3 inches of makeup on is not the only way to look attractive, and just trying to help them navigate the way through. And actually that's where the house system works really, really well, because the largest house is only about 65 pupils, and they're vertically grouped. So you've got year 9 all the way up to year 13. And they see that, the children see, the boys are in boys' houses, they see the older boys, and that there is a way out at the other end, and the girls the same. And the older pupils are really good at mentoring and saying, you know what, I hated everybody when I was 15, and now I don't. And and just talking them through it. And again, we talked about COVID a lot, which I know is a long time ago. But one of the things we noticed post-COVID was, because we were locked down for 2 years, that role modelling and that sort of looking up and almost copying what the older children were doing was missing. And it took us about 2.5 years really to re-establish that, because they didn't know, they hadn't seen people in the years above them go through GCSEs and A levels, and therefore they didn't really know what to do. And now we're far enough beyond COVID that that's been re-established. So yeah, I hope your beautiful, sweet children stay beautiful, sweet children, but they're likely to become horrible teenagers at some stage.
It's very reassuring that team of
and it does really work, and it's lovely when, particularly amongst the boys, we've got some lovable rogue who was really, really quite tricky when he was 15, putting his arm around 18, putting his arm around the younger boys, saying it'll be all right. It's just lovely.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got one.
Oh, please.
How do you navigate the uses of social media and things like that with, I've got a 9-year-old who is never going to have a phone. My concern is with access to phones and social media, actually they have no way of switching off. So if they have a horrible day at school, actually they're carrying that phone home with them, WhatsApp, Messenger. How do you support that within the schools?
So it's a really good question. So not having their phones during the day, because it's real with teenagers. It's fear of missing out. Everybody else has got a phone. Everybody else knows everything, and I don't. But when you look at what they do on social media, 90-odd% of it is the people around them. So if none of them have got phones, then no one's missing out, because nobody's doing anything. And actually, in this is the first year, second year, the fifth form haven't had so we've extended it into year 11 this year, and actually it has calmed a lot of those sorts of issues down, because they don't have their phones during the day. And where social media really started to take off, I mean, it was extraordinary. I'd be in my office and I'd have a parent phoning me up about some massive issue that had arisen between pupils, literally, and the children are still walking from the classroom, and because the rate at which it escalated. Whereas if they haven't got their phones, and yes, they might have a falling out with their friend and they might not talk for half an hour, but actually by the time it comes to the end of the day, they've forgotten all that. So that really helps. In PSHE, we do a lot about phones and social media, and the sensible use of social media. And also in the boarding houses, the junior year groups don't have their phones at night. They're taken off them at night, and it's something we encourage you as day parents to do the same. Obviously, you don't want their phones for never to have a phone, but at some point they've got to learn how to use it and learn how to use it sensibly. But we try and say that, like, no phones upstairs, no phones in bedrooms, that sort of thing. And it's a sort of chicken and egg thing, isn't it? Just trying to educate them, but not allowing them to fall into too much trouble. We have a really tight filtering and monitoring system on our Wi-Fi network, and I get probably somewhere in the region of 100 emails a day where the system has picked up some word.
Sometimes it's me, isn't it?
Yeah. And whatever tobacco mosaic virus is, I hate it, because they're studying it in biology. It comes up over and over and over again. But it's good because I just literally it takes me half a second to glance through them and delete them. But actually, where children have searched things that are inappropriate, we have been able to pick it up. I forward the email on to the tutor and the house parent. They can have a conversation. Some have been quite surprised, actually.
Just to pick up on a couple of things
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, Jack, was the power of the older students is really significant in that, because actually sometimes we as adults can have a conversation where a 17 and 18-year-old has that conversation with a 14 and 15-year-old and says, these are things to avoid. So we try to encourage, they are often on those social media channels in the way that we're not. So we can put in enforcements around it, which we do, but actually the conversation that happens. The other thing we do is we believe it's a school matter. So if it affects what it happens in school, that's difficult for us. But Saturday nights, I had 2 students with me Saturday night. They didn't choose to be there. They were requested to be there with me because something that happened in a social media group off-site. They'd used an unpleasant word. They did some time sanction. We then had a conversation about it. And I think it's the conversations that the house teams will have, the mentors will have, the tutors one-to-one will often have. So it's
So there's like a collaboration between
Yeah.
home and school in
absolutely.
these WhatsApp
Yeah.
issues.
And I think as parents, I was saying earlier to a couple of parents here that if we can get parents to work together, because if you all take the phones in at night, we just protect young people so much, because we've seen the devastation that happens when a kid gets a message on their own at night in their room. But we also see the real positives that there are when they get a like and an affirmation. And so these aren't all bad. We don't think they're all bad. We just want to get them in the right place and the right way. But I think as parents, you will know much more than the parents did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it evolves so quickly.
Yeah.
It's so quick.
So, but there are some real positives about having the phones. The things that they can do, and I think there's the stuff that James alluded to with the Flacker Challenge. We couldn't have done that without those social media groups, because they can connect into the really positive channels as well. So there's a balance piece. Thank you so much for that question. Please.
Is it possible to talk about day boarding as well? What current ratios are and how the houses work in the senior school?
Yeah, so broadly we're about 50-50 boarding a day. And if you're a day pupil, you're in a day house, and as Jeff said, there are about 60 in those houses, and about 12 per year group across the 5-year groups. The boarding houses are a similar size, the through houses, so you might have a year group of 12, and there might be 1 or 2 flexi boarders. And those flexi boarders either board for 1 night a week or up to 4 nights a week. So there's kind of variety depending on their situation and what works for them. We tend to find that as they go, we really enjoy working with teenagers, and we're used to those conversations. And to be honest, it's a lot easier for us to have some of those conversations about homework, study, than it can be for a parent, because we're not quite as close. And therefore, some parents will say, well, can they come and stay and do their homework in house and come home? And that can be right for a season, particularly maybe as they're approaching GCSEs or A-levels. So we're about 50-50 of our boarders, probably about 10-15% are flexi boarders. But there is a bit of a choice. So if they want to be a flexi boarder, then they would be in a boarding house for us, rather than being a day student who would occasionally board, because they wouldn't really feel part of that community, and we want them to feel part of that boarding house. Anything else? You got a question, Mr. Moss? You're just scratching.
No.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I just want to thank my colleagues. As you see, you will have seen that there's a great deal of both experience, but also a real passion and a joy that we get from working with young people. I couldn't do what Mr. Moss does and work with small children. They're too enthusiastic. We love that journey through, and what the best days for us, that final day when you see these young men and women and their optimism and their hope as they're heading out. And then we get the privilege of meeting them later on saying, I'm doing this job now, and can I introduce you to my partner or my wife or my husband, or this is my dog, or whatever it might be. That's an amazing thing for us to be part of, and it's a privilege to partner with parents in that world. So Mr. Moss, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much to Mr. Salisbury and to his panel. Hope you found that to be really, really informative. They will be around, I do hope. I know that the snacks are still next door, and they'll be around to answer any questions you might have. But let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Now, of course, there is the opportunity to have a look around the senior school. There is the open day coming up after half term. We're looking at the date in particular. 1st of March. So if you need to have a look around the school or any other time as well, they will be very happy to show you around and give you a bespoke tour and chats to other members of staff, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to either. Open morning works really well because you get to have a tour with some students, and it's a normal Saturday morning for us, so you'll see the school exactly as it is. I know that some of you have already come for one-to-one visits. Really happy to do either of those. Essentially, it's just beginning to think about the process, and as you go through that, we'd love to help.
Thank you for your time this evening. Do stay around if you'd like to ask more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah.